in their graveyard, like, defiling the statue. Hey freaks, it's JJ, and today I'm going to be explaining the story behind Opeth's album, Still Life. We're just going to jump right into track 1, The More. So, basically the premise of this story is this protagonist, who's not really given a name, but we'll just call him the protagonist. He begins off by kind of traversing through these woods and these creepy moors, and is thinking back on his life. And so he's on this journey to return to his homeland, his village that he grew up in which he was exiled 15 years ago. So he was beaten and abused and thrown out of the village for being a non-believer and going against the church. So I kind of think of this huge, like, overbearing church thing that is, like, basically the main governing system of this village. And so if you're not a part of the church, or if you go against them, they have the power to do what they want with you. So he is, in this track, he's traveling through the woods and the moors in this creepy-ass place, trying to convince himself to keep going. So he is thinking back on the, like, during the heavy parts of the song, I like to think of him, like, thinking back on the awfulness that took place during his time in the village. And, during the, like, pretty soft parts, I like to think of the reason why he's going back in the first place. So he's going back to seek out his old lover named Melinda, and who he's still in love with. He's kind of struggling with these conflicting feelings of desperately not wanting to return to this place, while also needing to return in order to save the love of his life, from the church and to bring her to a better place. Yeah, he's kind of conflicted, and then at the very end of the song, he pops out of the woods, and he arrives in the village. That brings us to track 2, God's Head Lament. He arrives in the village, and he's kind of sneaking around, hiding. He doesn't want to get caught because he knows if he's caught, he'll get thrown out again and or beaten and killed. So he's sneaking around, and he's trying to find Melinda. Well, come to find out, he finds her at the church, and she's become a nun. So this song is him still being conflicted about, worrying about getting caught and prosecuted, but at the same time, desperately needing to find this woman. And so this is the moment, at the end of the song, is the moment where their eyes first meet. And then he kind of has this realization that it was worth coming back for her because he still desperately loves her. So track 3, Benighted, one of my favorite tracks on the album. So this is where the protagonist kind of goes to meet Melinda in this clandestine little secret meeting. And he tries to convince her to come away with him. And so I think he's kind of built up this idea of Melinda in his head for so long, and just been thinking about this moment for 15 years that he maybe becomes a little bit too hasty. He decides to try and convince her by talking shit about the church and saying that she's brainwashed, and trying to reveal all the bad things about this village and this community that she's a part of, while also trying to seduce her. So I think the song is, like, really beautiful and kind of sexy. So I kind of imagine him trying to seduce Melinda as his main form of trying to convince her to come away with him. So as beautiful as the song is, he's not actually successful in convincing her to come away with him at the end of the song. She decides that she does not want to renounce her vows as a nun, and she says no. That brings us to track 4, Moonlapse Vertigo. And so in this track, I like to think that, when he had this secret meeting with Melinda, he maybe snuck into the church. The church, in my mind, being this, like, huge, like, castle-type fortress, run by these, like, evil, like, religious dictators. But anyway, he snuck into this, like, castle church fortress thing, and this is, maybe at the end of their meeting, he was almost caught. And so this is him trying to escape from the church, trying to get out, running for his life with these, religious figureheads kind of hot on his trail. And, as he's running for his life, he's also thinking back on his conversation with Melinda in his meeting, and how maybe he didn't quite go about that, the most delicate of ways. Maybe he should have been more patient and not just shitting on her way of life and her church and this community that she's become a part of. Maybe he should have handled that a little bit more delicately. And so this is him, running for his life while also trying to mull over this meeting and figure out what went wrong. And then also at the end of this track, since he is very close to being caught by by the church, he realizes that maybe there is a possibility that if she doesn't come away with him, she might also be at risk of, being prosecuted by the church as well. So he, decides to give it one more shot, mostly because, he wants her to come away with him, but also he's convinced himself that it would be best for her safety if she were to leave than stay. So then we go on to track 5, Face of Melinda. So, upon his reflection in the last song, he realizes that, maybe he should just go to her honestly and just tell her how much he loves her. So this is him just kind of confessing his love to her and explaining that he never stopped thinking about her over the last 15 years and how much he cares for her and came back to this awful place just to be with her and save her. So this is maybe a more emotional way of trying to convince her to come away with him, and it's more successful. So at the end of the song, I believe she does agree to come away with him, and I like to imagine them kind of just falling into each other's arms, in this like lustful moment of finally being reunited after 15 years. And so that's kind of how I imagine this song going, or they may have as well slept together in celebration of this as well. So in track 6, they are planning to leave together the next morning. So he goes to find her and collect her so they could run away. And come to find out, she's been captured by the church. They, I guess, found out about them being together. I like to think that, because they spent the night together, the church has condemned her as an adulteress and decided to hang her. So the lyrics are kind of ambiguous. So either her throat has been slit or she's been hung by the neck. So I like to think of her being hung with like a red rope, symbolizing her as an adulteress. The red, like if you ever read the Scarlet Letter, like red symbolizes adultery. So I like to think that they hung her with like a red rope to symbolize the transgression that she's done. So after the protagonist comes upon Melinda's dead body, he is thrown into a monstrous rage. He goes crazy. So he, in his madness, he just starts murdering people left and right. He's so just filled with rage, and he's overcome with temporary insanity, and he just goes about killing literally everyone in sight. Doesn't matter if they're innocent, if they had a hand in her death. I just picture him just killing everybody. And so he goes on this long rampage and massacre, blood everywhere, and then eventually he collapses from exhaustion. He's just so spent from just killing people left and right that he collapses from exhaustion, and he's taken over by the mob of people and captured by the church. So I really like this song, especially the title of this song, Serenity Painted Death, because I feel like it really encapsulates the idea of having a moment turned horribly, horribly on itself. It's kind of I think most people can kind of relate to this at some point in their life, where it's that moment where you first wake up in the morning and you're so happy, and then you realize, and then you remember something that happened or something shitty, and you're like, oh fuck, life actually sucks. But it's that moment when you first wake up where you don't remember how shitty everything is and then it all comes crashing down. So it's our protagonist was so close to having everything that he wanted, and then the next moment is just destroyed. It's serenity turned into some kind of horrifying scene of death. So I really love that imagery and that metaphor there. So moving on to track number 7, final track on this album, White Cluster. And this, we last left off, our protagonist had collapsed and taken over by the mob of church officials. And so he wakes up, and this is kind of ambiguous in that I like to think that he's been held captive and tortured for a long time, where some people think it's just the next day or something. But I like to think that the church has tried to convince him to confess to all of his sins. But he knows as soon as he confesses, then they have nothing else, no other reason to hold him, so he knows that they'll definitely kill him after he confesses. But he's been held for so long, days, weeks, months, years even, I don't know. But eventually they break him down to the point where he just wants to be dead. He doesn't care anymore. And he finally, in desperation, finally leads him to confess to all of his sins. Then he is taken to the gallows to be hung. And I like to think, in my mind, that they use the same exact red rope to hang him as well, to symbolize him as an adulterer. And then, so he's standing on the gallows, that last few moments before he's executed, and then he has this vision of Melinda. And so in this vision, he sees her, in all of her beauty, and it's kind of this ghost version of her, and she beckons him to the other side. So it's just kind of this bittersweet moment where, obviously very tragic ending, but also at the same time, it's kind of like a Romeo and Juliet type of thing where he just wants to be anywhere she is. If she's dead, he's going to be cool with being dead too, because then at least, he can be with her and he can reunite with her in death. So yeah, beautiful album, beautiful concept. I love it. I think it has kind of like a fantasy type theme to it as well, which is obviously fan of fantasy myself, so I kind of imagine this as like an epic like fantasy love story. And so yeah, that is the traditional opinion of what this album is about. But then I also had this second like kind of weird slash stupid brainchild of based on like just the cover art. So the cover is this this statue, this kind of like mausoleum type saint. So yeah, if you like flip through the little lyric book, I forget what you call these things, but yeah, it's more pictures of statues in all of this. So I kind of had this idea where, what if we were to take that imagery literally, and that Melinda was never a person, what if she was a statue? And so it would then become this story about this crazy-ass dude who had fallen in love with this statue, or maybe she was a real person at one point, and then she died, and then they, you know, built this statue as an effigy over her grave or something. But I don't know, I kind of like this idea that this crazy-ass dude fell in love with this statue, and then the church like kicked him out for being a creep, and then 15 years later he's going mad in the woods after being exiled for 15 years. He comes back to find his love, his statue, and then like these church officials find the crazy dude from like 15 years ago in their graveyard like defiling the statue. And so, you know, then I like to think that, you know, the church had then decided, like, fuck it, we're just not gonna have this statue because this crazy dude keeps, like, touching it and being creepy with it. And so then, you know, that Serenity Painted Death song would then become where the church just breaks the statue and, like, decides to be done with it because she's not worth having now that she's been tainted by this dude. And so that, like, it kind of just changes the whole idea of the song from something, like, beautiful and, like, tragic to something kind of ridiculous, but also like horrifying and hilarious at the same time. I don't know, sorry if that like ruins the whole concept for you, but it was just an idea I had and I thought it was kind of funny or kind of weird. Anyway, take what you want with it. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you like the new setup here. We'll see how it goes in editing, but hopefully, yeah, I'll bring in some higher quality videos. Sound, I know sound's been kind of shitty in my other videos, so I'm moving up in the world. Anyway, thanks for watching, and if you want to see more content from me or suggest other videos, I do take suggestions, so leave those down in the comments. Let me know what other videos you want to see from me, and let me know what you think of Opeth and this album and the concept, or if you have conflicting opinions of how you wanted to interpret the music and the lyrics. I'd love to know that as well, because, again, as always, art is subjective, and so if you had a different opinion of what you thought this album would be about, leave that in the comments. If you want to get a glimpse into my personal life, feel free to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then if you really, really want to be my friend, check out my website down in the description and sign up for my newsletter. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys.